looking at things in a totally different perspective, which I found, really interesting and something that I've really worked on and continued to enjoy as my career has developed.
So who is Neale Hill outside of the Ford Motor Company?
George, first of all, great to be here. Myself, outside of work, one of the things that I work very hard at is actually trying to keep work and private life separate. Purely because you've got to have time away from work, you've got to be able to disengage and elements like that. So how I spend my time away from work is I'm a passionate, avid golfer. So I have an addiction to the game of golf. I've been playing the game for over 30 years, still trying to get better at it. And then also I'm an avid bird watcher. So a hobby that my wife and I do together. We picked it up from her parents. And that combines my other passion, which is wildlife photography.
Oh, wow.
So I tend to find that when I'm not on the golf course, I will be in South Africa's great outdoors, in the bush, in the national parks, combining my love for bird watching and photography, and that really just gives me an opportunity just to really kick away from work and switch the mind off and do something completely different.
I suppose, it sounds like the relaxing part of golf, because golf is relaxing unless you stress yourself out. And the outdoors with birds, and that must be quite serene and surreal.
I find it very, very calming, very therapeutic, and just the ability to be able to, or the opportunity to really enjoy the environment that we have in South Africa. And that was an appreciation I developed from the time that we spent living overseas, and you get to really realize what South Africa has to offer and how fantastic our weather is. People talk about South Africa and all of its challenges, but we have the most incredible climate, the most incredible weather, and the ability to spend time outdoors and really enjoy it. So it's really tapping into that.
Lovely, lovely. What was your first car?
My first car was an Escort 1600 Sport Mark II.
Ford.
A Ford.
Escort 1600 Mark II.
Yes.
I remember that. Was that the one that was one of the first hatchbacks?
It wasn't the hatchback, so it was actually the two-door. It was a sort of a special edition that Ford did in South Africa. It was built in, and I forgot my dates right, it was 79 through to 82. And it was actually the precursor for the RS2000.
Oh, wow.
And growing up as a young kid, teenager, that was sort of the iconic car that I really aspired to. And when I got my driver's license, when I was eligible to drive, was very fortunate enough to acquire one of those. My parents acquired it for me, and that was my first car.
What color was it?
It was powder blue.
Powder blue. That was a very popular color at the time.
Very popular.
Very popular color. I was thinking of the XR3.
Yes. The XR3 came after that.
Yes,
yeah.
I was thinking of the XR3 because that was one of my dream cars that I never owned. So, what are you driving now?
So currently, my daily driver is a Ranger Raptor, which I just absolutely love. Okay. It's one of those vehicles. It's a truck that you drive. You don't care about potholes. You don't care about speed bumps. You don't care about traffic circles, because it's just capable of doing everything, and it has awesome road presence, and tends to find that taxis don't mess with you as well.
Yes, because you're bigger.
But just in terms of the comfort, it's such a practical, versatile vehicle for, especially when I do get time away from work, either golfing or bird watching.
Well, all of your outdoorsy stuff, I suppose,
yeah,
kind of
just fits my lifestyle perfectly, and get a lot of enjoyment driving it.
Ranger Raptor is an impressive car, and one of the most popular cars in AutoTrader, as a matter of fact. So,
fantastic. Always love to hear that.
It really is. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Durban, so that was where I did all my schooling and university education. The early years of my life, the very early years, we actually spent quite a bit of time moving around with my parents. So my dad worked for Nedbank, and as a bank employee, he got transferred quite extensively. So born in East London, when I was 3 months old, we moved to Durban. At the age of about 1.5, we ended up moving to Kimberley, of all places, and spent about 3 years in Kimberley.
Oh, wow.
And then ultimately ended up coming back to Durban, and then we settled and spent a lot of time. We spent the rest of my childhood years and early adulthood in Durban.
And when did you end up in Joburg?
So I ended up actually when I joined Ford Motor Company in 1991.
Okay.
So finished university, after school, did my year's national service through conscription, and then got a job with Ford Motor Company and took the big relocation from Durban to initially Pretoria, and then I decided that Pretoria was not quite for me. Being a Durbanite, Pretoria, Durban, so I ended up settling in Johannesburg, and we now live in Centurion, so sort of halfway in between.
Halfway in between, oh, okay. Well, I mean, Durban to Joburg, Cape Town to Joburg, I don't know why people do it. I suppose it's really economics at the end of the day. It's the work is mostly up here, because most people want to be at the coast, really.
Correct. And I think growing up there, I've enjoyed the coast, but I really, growing up in Durban, I really embraced it wholeheartedly. So now if you ask me where I go on holiday, I'll go to the bush rather than going to the beach.
Oh, really?
But still enjoy the coast. But it was really the move. The move was because of work.
Yes.
So it was a job offer that came onto the table. It was something that I actually quite ironic. Passionate about the motor industry. Loved cars. Always had an interest in it, and ended up getting a job offer for a motor company, and that sort of kick-started the career.
Well, that leads me to my next question, which was, what was your dream when you were young? What did you want to become?
It's actually quite interesting because coming out of later years of high school, gearing up to go to university, I had this aspiration to become a lawyer. And
I would never have said that.
Yeah, and got into first year university, and then decided that stats was way too hard, Latin was way too complicated, and then decided that after first year it was time to do a career change and a sort of a shift. Wasn't 100% sure what exactly I was going to do or where I wanted to go, but ended up changing faculty, so I went into Bachelor of Social Science at Natal University, and that allowed me to pick up psychology and industrial psychology as two majors. And I think what really awoke with me in that change was the interest in people, and working with people and understanding how people tick, and how to work with different people. So that was kind of how I got into those as majors. I still carried on with my legal studies, so I finished that. I did
Which was probably useful.
It's actually turned out to be very useful in the latter years. So now I can have a conversation with our company lawyers and actually know what I'm talking about, and also know when they are saying things that I don't necessarily agree with. But then did business administration, picked up marketing as well, and that kind of it was quite a broad degree. But I always say university for me was about learning to think think differently. And mostly adopt an inquiring mindset about things.
I've always said that. It doesn't matter what you study. It can be anything. Mm-hmm. What education does, or formal education does, is it changes the way your brain thinks.
Yep.
Changes the way you problem solve. So what you're saying is that's the biggest benefit out of what you did.
Yeah, it's certainly not being an applied science per se in terms of the degree that I did, but it was really about the thought processes, the inquiring mind, tackling things in a different way, and looking at things in a totally different perspective, which I found really interesting, and something that I've really worked on and continued to enjoy as my career has developed.
Search AutoTrader.